Welcome back to another episode of the Origins Podcast. Today on the show, we have Mike Pierce running in the 11th Congressional District on the Republican side. Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm retired U.S. Army, Lieutenant Colonel. I have a PhD in organizational leadership. I was an enlisted soldier. I started off at Melrose Park, and I enlisted there after college. I went to North Central College right here in Naperville, as a matter of fact. And I grew up in the area throughout the district. So I've lived in a lot of towns of the district. Throughout Elgin, I was working in Aurora and living there when I went into the Army. I've lived in Woodridge. I worked in Genoa. I've gone, throughout, Hanover Park. I lived in Germany for about 25 years after I went into the Army. They sent me over there, and so I retired from there in the Army in 2012, working at the European Command Headquarters, also known as EUCOM, and also they have Africa Command is there as well. And I continued working on another 12 years after that as a contractor, first as kind of a subject matter expert in things like exercises and what we call defense critical infrastructure. And then I was also worked on a couple of occasions as a director of operations for two different companies who were both we had sites both in Europe and in the U.S., and so I worked in a number of countries working there. All told, probably been about, close to 30 countries. I deployed to Iraq in 2009 or to 2008 to 2009, 15 months. I'm a dad. I got 3 kids out of college. One is in high school, sophomore. And then I've got 3 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters, 1 grandson. My son's currently in the Army right now. He's a captain. He was deployed to both Iraq and to Afghanistan when they did that crazy pullout there. So we've got a very broad background. My family actually goes back into the roots of this district from St. Charles and Batavia all the way up to Belvedere. My family's actually been, on the dad's side, somewhere around 175 years to 200 years in this area.
Wow. So what do you think your military experience, how do you think it impacts how you're going to be able to serve in Congress?
Well, I think the military experience has taught us, and that's the key word, is serve. I'm here to serve. Service is something that, over time, you learn to put others first. You learn about selfless service, right? And that means, the mission before self, right? So that's where my military services kicked in. While I was in the military, I learned a lot about, how to make decisions, the different processes that one goes through, learn about how to do different types of staff work. So very familiar with bureaucracy and government. It's a little bit different because, obviously you can't change your mind if you're in the middle of a deployment and you don't like a decision. You're stuck there. So you have to really work with people. I learned to work with people of all ranks and all backgrounds. So I think my military service actually has taught me a lot and enabled me to develop skills that most people probably have not had to exercise over the course of time. Also, my military service gave me the opportunity to live overseas. I speak fluent German and French, and also having met people from all over the world, that's given me a lot of insight and understanding into everything from, what the effects of communism are, for example, to multiculturalism and to seeing how European society has changed over many, many years, as well as to see, how much America has to offer the world and how great America is. And I think a lot of people downplay how great our country really is. It's just a pleasure and an honor, and that really made me appreciate it, and so I'm proud to serve today.
So were you located in East Germany or West Germany?
The western part.
Okay.
There's a number of German states that made up what was called East Germany, and that happened after World War II. That was really the Soviet-occupied sector, and then they had a reunification,
Yep.
and those eastern states combined with the western states, and then that became Germany once again, a united Germany. So I lived in Heidelberg, but I also, because of the Army, I moved to places as far as, and I lived in Bavaria, and I was about near Nuremberg, That people might know that. I was near Frankfurt in a town called by Kreuznach, and I was also in Heidelberg itself, and I worked down in Stuttgart. So those are the major geographical names that people might be familiar with. So all in all, I was at least like 6 different locations while I was in Germany, in addition to my deployment. I have 5 overseas tours.
So you mentioned communism. Do you think you've seen lasting effects, or you can see the difference between what was East Germany and now West Germany?
Well, it's not only in East Germany; it's across all of those countries that used to be behind what we call the Iron Curtain. Let me give you an example. Yes, you do see the effects, and a way I looked at it was when I first got there. The unit that I was in, soon after there, I was the headquarters commander of a brigade.
Okay.
So I had a company. It was the largest signal company in Europe, so like over 200 people. And so I had the brigade commander, a lot of lieutenant colonels, the colonel, senior people, as well as a lot of junior people and people my own. So we went to the former Eastern Germany for the first time. American troops were over there, a town called Bad Salzungen. You may have heard of this because they made a movie about it, all the treasure that was buried there during the war, Monuments Men. Anyway, so this is the town where that took place. And so we were the first. And when we went in there, they welcomed us, and they had flags, and so happy to see us. And the rest of the Germans were like, so what? It's just the Americans. But to the East Germans, to see Americans for the first time, they were so looking forward to seeing us. And it was like night and day between Western Germany and the East Germany. And then over the years, I've been to like the Czech Republic. And over time, it was kind of like seeing a springtime. You start to see the buildings start to get improved upon. You see commerce developing, and you can see this in all of these different countries throughout that former part of it. So it's tremendous to see. It's like a reawakening, because under communism and socialism, if you did improve your house, they would either tax you more or they could get into trouble. I know one person, they kept a hole in their basement of their home for a number of years, so that they would not force them to have another family live there. So people did all kinds of stupid, crazy things in order to get by, because of the system that was there. And it's just a night and day difference. And today, a lot of those countries now have grown so much economically, and they've really caught up, and they're doing a lot. They're not where we are, but they've certainly made huge strides.
Yeah. So what sparked you to really get involved in? Obviously, you were involved in public service before with the military, but what sparked you to run for office?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. A lot of people ask me that all the time, believe it or not. And really, it's just about, I want to continue service to our country. While I was, I guess the last several years, I really appreciated America when I would come home, and I saw so many changes going on. And so the last several years, I've kind of been rehoming here. My daughter and we have a house here and in town in Naperville, where I went to college. And I saw so many changes going on. I saw our economy, we're still struggling economically in ways that we don't need to be. And then I saw the decisions that were up in Washington, where a significant lack of accountability for major decisions. I think one of the things that the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when they pulled out of Afghanistan after more than 20 years of being there, and the way that they did that. And my son was deployed there actually at that time. So they sent him there only a few weeks after getting married. And the circumstances were certainly not what they should have been. And there was no accountability, a complete ignoring of the facts of what was going on the ground. And I think when people are in the military, I think they're oftentimes just kind of, people don't realize the impact that it has when you send people on these deployments.
Yeah.
And then I saw, I saw millions of people brought into America when we already had millions of people in America who were already in poverty.
Yes.
And I'm like, how does that make any sense? I mean, how many, we have millions of people who are living below the poverty line in America before the Biden administration, and yet they suddenly had, and what was even more infuriating is they had all these resources for people who came here illegally, but at the same time, they didn't have more resources for our seniors on Social Security, or are disabled, or our veterans even. I mean, we still have homeless veterans. America's homeless population grew, and just in the Illinois, our homeless population in Illinois grew during 2021 to 2024, went up 250% from 10,000 to 25,000. That's got nothing to do with the guy who's in office right now, but has everything to do with the people who are leading and making decisions. And I think that people, we're ignoring our fellow Americans. And I have so many people in my family who this affects personally, that I just wanted to get involved and put my hat in and say, hey, I want to step up. And I'm not planning on taking a salary, by the way. I'm going to donate my salary to show that, America should be about service. The people, our founders, we're coming up with our 250th anniversary next year. Mm-hmm. Our founders, you think that Patrick Henry was in the House of Burgesses in Virginia saying, give me liberty or give me death because he wanted a paycheck? These guys, when I see the Declaration of Independence over there, you think they did that because they wanted a paycheck? No, they did it because they cared about the ideals and they had a belief and a vision of what this country could be. And we need to get people back there who share those vision and ideals. And I feel like I do, and I feel like I have enough in me that I can go out and make a difference.
You brought up a lot there, and one thing that you brought up was illegal immigration. And being in the district that you're in, with the suburbs of Chicago, we know it's been there's a lot of tension surrounding illegal immigration, the way ICE is operating in Chicago and in the suburbs, especially in Aurora. Do you think that it's really the past administration's fault for opening the border and letting these people come in, or do you think it would have still been a problem?
Well, it depends on how one looks at the problem. The only way I see it is, had they not invited so many people so quickly and crashed the system, that there could be some room for negotiations on this. But there was, they completely went in the opposite direction. It caused such an upheaval of our systems. Taxes went up substantially. That affects everybody across the board. And I was just at a meeting earlier today, and they're talking about raising prices for gasoline and the grocery tax, which the state repealed. Well, of course, who's that going to affect? The people who are struggling or the people who have a lot? Well, obviously the people who are struggling, who can't drive electric cars, for example, they have to pay 48 cents for an Illinois gasoline tax. Those are the people who have to depend on their cars. A lot of people are affected by this, and so it's all interrelated. The bottom line is that had they not crashed the system the way that they did, Illinois would not be in the position it is right now. And I believe firmly in the American dream, and I believe people should come to America and be a part of it, but they should do it legally, because it's not, number one, it's not fair to everybody else who did come here legally, and also for those who are struggling, who are under duress around the world, under evil political regimes, who can't get here because there's not enough room because of quotas, but other people have jumped the system. And Americans like a sense of fair play. And as far as the implementation of this, we only see what they show on the news. But before they can take action, there has to be a warrant for somebody. They had to have done something. If you're incidentally caught, it's not like they haven't said, we're going to come after people who are illegal and you have a chance to leave. And I think I heard yesterday that 1.6 million people have left. So,
self-deported. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's great, because I believe America has room for people, but we have to do it the right way so people are not being trafficked and that they're not being taken advantage of. And certainly the people here at the lowest rung of our economics are not being taken advantage. So these are just common sense things. And, our opposition likes to paint it in terms of, well, take care of the least of these. Well, what about the other 20 million Americans who've been in poverty for, what about people who've never had an increase in their disability and are just kept at a subsistence level? Because as these taxes and things have gone up, people can't afford to buy homes and get into a home. If you're going to be 40 years old before you can buy your house because of all the loans you have to pay and all the taxes you have to pay, then you lose out on the American dream. Yep. So somebody's got to take a stand.
Yeah. No, I agree. And, the economy, you mentioned the economy, and it's really taken a turn with President Trump's tariff. I mean, talking about the stock market, we see increases and decreases weekly over fear of trade talks, right? And how do you think President Trump's, in the long term, his tariffs are going to affect the economy?
I think in the long term that they're having the desired effect. And some of it we're starting to see now. Some of it we may see later. But number one, it's brought a lot of nations to the table. And it's been deal after deal after deal has been struck so far. And so I think when people first heard about it, they overreacted. But now that they've seen that there's a methodology to the madness, if I could, paraphrase Shakespeare a little bit out of Hamlet, the bottom line is that our companies that were outsourcing have now started to say, okay, we're going to reverse that trend. And it's going to be helpful here in Illinois because, for example, Belvedere Chrysler plant, now it's Stellantis, which is, that's one of our towns in our district. That plant's going to reopen. That's going to bring 3,300 jobs back to the state that have been lost because they were sent overseas. But the tariffs, the president said no. Those tariffs have actually made those companies come to the table, and they're going to reinvest back into America. So that's how it's going to affect us here in Illinois. In the long term, the other part of it is, American products are going to be purchased because they become more competitive. Mm-hmm. And we're not, some things may go up in price, but then remember this, when you're paying for something, you're also paying for people who are Americans who are working and making those and manufacturing those things. So instead of us being at the tail end of that product, we are a part of that whole cycle. And so that helps our economy continue to strengthen. I believe in the long term that they're going to work out. And I think that there may be some short-term discomfort in some areas. And I don't think we should have them on every single thing all the time. Yeah. But certainly it's been an effective tool, and we can see the results of that.
Yeah. And talking to constituents in your district, have you been hearing nerve or worry over the tariffs?
I think the biggest things that I hear about from our constituents are the taxes, the jobs that are leaving Illinois and continue to leave, the high cost of living, the illegal immigration. Those seem to be the ones that are the most resonant. I have not heard people mention too much about the tariffs. Mm-hmm. I think it's tangential to the other stuff. And I believe everybody can achieve the American dream, Jack. Mm-hmm. But there are some things people have to do. Sometimes it takes time, but we can all achieve the American dream. Yeah. But if we're always looking at everybody else and being envious and looking backwards, we're not going to get there. So the tariffs were a way to stop that and get people to come back to America, hopefully come back to Illinois, and make our state so that our cost of living goes down, the wages go up, and people have jobs and a reason to stay.
Yeah. Around the 2000 when we were, in the Middle East, that's when it got escalated. But the talks around Palestine, the talks about Israel, Ukraine and Russia, obviously there was controversy on that spending bill to Ukraine. What do you think about our spending to allies? Do you think we need to keep funding allies to keep the area protected, or do you think we need to kind of let them figure it out and help them?
Well, that's a lot to unpack. Let me just break this down for you, make it a little easier. America, number one, America has had a traditional relationship in Europe of supporting NATO, and before that, we were allied with both, the Western nations, if you will, and both World War I and World War II. We allied with, helped the UK and France, and then. This again, we also had rescue, and we worked together. We set up this alliance, this NATO alliance, which was very successful. And then 9/11 happened, and we had the first Persian Gulf War, and then later on, we had 9/11 happened, and so people went into Afghanistan and into Iraq, and then so that's one thing right there. And then you have to understand that during that time, a lot of changes occurred. So NATO, some people felt that NATO was expanding too quickly after the Cold War was over with Russia. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so they grew, and they slowly kind of encroached upon closer and closer to Russia and Russia's traditional spheres of influence. And so that kind of annoyed them. At the same time, they got involved in some of the issues that were going down in the Balkans, and they kind of helped remove Kosovo out of Serbia, which had been traditionally a big part of Serbia. And so actually Putin had said that he had warned against that, and he got very disenchanted with the West because of that. So it helped lay the groundwork for him to take a a different approach back, and he may have always have had it, but it just cemented his approach that he couldn't trust the West, and he needed to kind of restore Russia. That in his opinion, of what he said was that the Allies had not, the NATO group had not really held up their end of the bargain. So that's one thing. So there were certain agreements made that if Ukraine gave up their nuclear weapons after the Cold War, that their safety would be guaranteed. In the Russians' mind, this was negated by the expansion of NATO, and so a large proportion of the population in eastern Ukraine is Russian. That part was given to Russia, or given to Ukraine, from Khrushchev, who was Ukrainian. He was the Soviet premier at one point. And then Crimea was also added into the mix. And so those kinds of things built these tensions and kind of laid the groundwork. So what Russia did going in clearly was wrong. But here we are. You've got a war going on over there. So if we were to ignore Ukraine, if we'd have taken a stronger stand earlier, they might not even have had the invasion like President Trump said. But instead, we didn't give them any really lethal aid until the first term of President Trump. When they went in 2014, we were offering them, MREs.
Yeah.
And then when Trump came in, he was at least giving them Javelin missiles so that they could, put up a fight. And then later on, during the Biden administration, the Russians took advantage of the perceived weakness and ineptitude, as was witnessed by the withdrawal in Afghanistan, and so they went in there. So here we are now, where we don't want to see Russia expand too much and just roll through.
Yes,
but on the other hand, we are getting ourselves entangled in a lot of European affairs. And so I think, number one, the Europeans do need to carry their weight. And despite all of this war that's right on their doorstep, when the Russians actually went into Ukraine, the Germans were only going to offer them like helmets, okay? So the Europeans have been way, way, way behind the power curve.
Yeah.
They used to have, they had to have compulsory military service of 1 year for all young men once they hit 18. They got rid of that about 10, 15 years ago, and the result has been now they want to try and bring it back, and people are protesting it. Like, they don't really care. So they've got a problem with the carrying of the population of wanting to serve. Their armed forces are good armed forces, but they're small and they're ineffective if they don't have enough people. And it's unlike anything they've had before, because they used to have the support of they're not the only ones. Let's just put it that way. So we have had to sustain these guys because we've had the forces. But we used to have 300,000 soldiers, in Europe. That went down to 30,000 combat troops, okay? So that's a big difference. And so we've tried to beef that back up, but 30,000 does not make up 300,000, right? Yeah. So America has had to prop up the European allies, but the European allies have only increased over an average about 0.75% on average of their expenditures of their gross national product. So they are not taking it seriously. So why is America supposed to be carrying their weight if they're not taking this threat to them seriously? It's still less than 3%. It's 2.76, I think, is what they're at right now. And that's well below. Now some countries are doing as much as they can because they're right next to Russia and they realize the threat is real. Now, if we shift now to Israel, Israel is the only United States reliable ally. It's the only democracy in the Middle East. Okay, so they can carry their weight. So the question is, now, can they carry it all alone? Maybe not, but they can certainly do a lot on their own. Yeah. If the U.S. ignores it, then we're also taking the kid gloves off of the Israelis and letting them do whatever they want to do. Because there's other people in the world who make armaments, and they would be happy to take their money as well. So we need to be judicious in how we invest in and how we send our foreign military sales and our foreign military aid, because some of it is sales and some of it is aid. Yes. And so if we could say, well, we're going to stop giving, military aid to Israel, okay, well, then they'll say, all right, well, then, we're going to do what we want to do. And that could end up with another larger war that's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Part of the agreement.
We talked about the economy, and really, again, going back, time back to the economy, younger people, young millennials, older Gen Z, young Gen Z, the American dream has been quoted as the American dream is dead or the American dream is unachievable. And you've been talking about the American dream. Do you think that it's dead for Gen Z, or do you think that, we can rally together and bring it back and revive it?
I absolutely believe the American dream is achievable. Okay. And there's a number of people who pointed this out. If you stay in school, you get your education. If you do get married, you stay married. You work a job, and you save your money. Okay, and then I would say the next thing of that is look for the opportunities to either conservatively put your money to work, or where you can make additional ways of getting more money so that you can achieve that. So let's take a look at it. People, okay, look, I got myself a cup of coffee from some unknown brand. I'm not gonna say who, right? But I'm not working anymore because I'm retired. But if I was working, I would know that the $10 I almost spent for a coffee and a cookie, that if I saved that $10 a day for a year, okay, then I would have enough that I could probably find something that's about $3,600, right? And I would probably be able to have something where I could get together with a couple of my friends and put a down payment in on a house. So if you work cooperatively with your friends, you can get yourself started on something. Or you can go into the military service like I did. And I think as a representative, what I would try to do is expand the opportunities for people to serve our country. Not everybody can do military service, but there should be a way everybody can serve our country. In Israel, for example, everybody serves. Everybody serves. It's not a question. But it's a ticket to being, your success in the society. But if you go in the military, you have access, you get the GI Bill, and you have access to the VA benefits. So if we had people who invested in our country with themselves and put themselves for our country can benefit back to them. And we need to get more of that. So number one, service to the country will result in service and being able to achieve the American dream. Two, education. Try and look for an opportunity to get more education, but use your education, and education is the stepping stone. It's a stepping stone. It's not the end all. So use what you've got. And look, my degree was in French and political science, mostly French. But I was going to I had a plan. I was going to work for a company that was owned by a French company. So have a plan. Okay. Now that didn't work out. So you have plan B. So if you need to plan ahead, you need to be able to expect that there's going to be things where you have to make adjustments on the plan. But if you have a goal, you should always be tacking, which is a sailing term, in the direction of your dreams. I did that for many, many years. And have a big dream. Don't be afraid to go after the big dream. But I say keep your eyes on the prize, but your nose to the grindstone. So if it means you got to do some nug work. Then you do the nug work. If it means you go and join the Army and you pick weeds out of the sidewalk and do push-ups, 15 times a day until you become something, that's what you do. But you keep your goal in mind. And if you do those simple things, you can achieve that American dream. Not going to say you're going to be a millionaire. But you can achieve that American dream. And there's many ways that people can get home ownership. Instead of going in as soon as you get out of college and getting a car loan, which they make it so easy, that immediately puts you behind the power curve, plus the student loan debt, take a look at that. And maybe you don't buy that brand new car out of college, that maybe you save some of that money you would have used for a car payment, and save on to it 4 or 5 years. Maybe you stay at home for a few more years to get yourself in a position to have good credit so you can go out and buy yourself a home.
Well, and you mentioned your coffee that you bought, and that's I think the consumer, the Gen Z is, it's a consumer generation. We have to have the new iPhone. We have to have a Starbucks, and I get Starbucks, I would say 3 times a week, and
Wow.
that's right? I mean, that's a lot I'm putting in to something that I drink in 30 minutes. And it is an issue. And I think
it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And you're not the only one. And it's a part
know.
of our culture, and it's a part of this disposable. But, look, I'm not going out and I'm not eating 3 times a day either. I mean, I am a person who's always on the go. So this is like this and a bunch of Hershey Kisses is pretty much my diet right now. That or a Snickers bar. So it's either this or coffee or Coca-Cola. But, most people eat normally. But think about it. When you're working, you put the time in. You have a plan, and you write it down, and you say, okay, I don't know if you ever saw The Shawshank Redemption. It's a great movie. Mm-hmm. Anyway, this guy just calculated how long it would take for him to cut through and grind away with his spoon to get rid of that prison wall. And think of it like this. If you have a goal, you have to nug away for 30 years to get something, but you'll get it, then it's worth it. But what people do is they don't set that plan. They don't put it in motion. They don't set 5-year goals or 10-year goal, and they get off track.
Yeah, and I mean, we talk about it. I'm in finance class at high school right now, and we talk about how really, like, the $5 Starbucks that you get, or coffee that you get 3 times a week, that's $15 you could be putting into, let's say, a Robinhood account or an investment account of some sort. And when you work your summer job, instead of going out and buying new clothes from a nice brand, putting it into an investment account and growing that money, so when you're in college, you're not suffering or you're not worried. Again, like you mentioned, with buying the new car, that is there's a couple finance podcasters out there that always say you should buy the beater. You don't need a new expensive car. And I mean, that even middle of the road brands have become more expensive over the years, right? And you just don't need the 2025 or the 2024, and you can go back.
My wife and I, we drove our cars till they were teenagers, literally.
Yeah.
We did that for many years. But, at the end of the day, it worked out for us because, we've been able to have enough that we're able to manage and kind of build up a little bit of a nest egg in various types of assets. There's different times. If you can't go buy a house, then go buy yourself a little bit of, have a balance to things. So put some money in the bank. Yeah. Maybe you buy yourself a little bit of gold or silver because it's kind of an inflation hedge. I know some people are looking at Bitcoin now. So inflation hedges are good. You should have some sort of an insurance saving vehicle for yourself as well. These are things they should be teaching more of to the people while they're growing up because, gold's expensive right now, but you can buy a small amount of it or a small amount of it and various things. And if you buy some property, it'll go up. You have to put the work in. Yeah. And that's another thing. People want it, but they don't want to put the work in. Yeah. So it's like I had a friend of mine. He was a really, really good triple jumper, an Olympian, believe it or not. He used to be in the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia. And he defected during the Cold War from a track meet that was in Indianapolis, and he came to our college. Jan Chada was his name, and he still has the school record down at Purdue for a triple jump, and he was like one of the top in the world at one point. But he said to me, Mike, you need to know how much, what, and when. It's the same thing with your savings and achieving the American dream. You got to know how much you can put away. What you need to do to maintain your budget, and when to make those investments, if you will, judiciously. And some people, their investment is every day in that coffee and chasing the latest fashion. You should dress to impress, but you don't have to chase the newest fashion every time. Yeah. And you should be professional. You can also achieve the American dream. You're sending a subliminal signal every time you work out there. Do you want to be the person who's working on the line, or do you want to eventually become the manager and maybe an owner? But you need how you carry yourself, how you present yourself, and this is why parents are trying to explain to their kids, when you're dressing up like a unicorn or a Care Bear on your free time, that's fine, but that's not real life, okay? In real life, people want to be able to know that, how one presents himself as a serious person. If you want to get hired and go further along in life than just being that first line worker, then you need to be able to take those steps. It's not impossible. People come with no education, become enormously successful. But you have to understand the value of work and be willing to work and stay focused. And, there's lots of distractions in life. I'm not saying you don't ignore it. You put your family, you put your faith, and you work, okay? And if you put family and faith and your work, okay, and then you'll have freedom, especially when you get older. Whereas other people, they're worrying when they're 60 years old, oh, I don't have enough money, I got to keep working because my Social Security, the company I was working for, I was only dependent on my pension plan, or I don't even have a pension plan, and then they're going to, in 5 years, they're going to have to retire, and then they don't know what they're going to do. So putting all of this stuff and being able to write it out requires a little bit of planning, a little bit of effort, but if you took some of the time that you're taking maybe when you're on TikTok or on the phone or buying the coffees and put that into saying how I'm going to achieve this step and what am I going to do. When I was in the Army and I was freezing my butt off in Germany, in the woods of Germany where we having combat training was going on around me, and I was thinking about what am I going to do when I get out of the Army. I'm doing this because someday I'm going to retire from the Army, and I've got some land in Georgia. I'm going to pay for it. And I paid on a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Eventually, I paid it off, So look for your opportunities, do the work, and, keep your eye on the goal.
Yeah. No, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think that the phrase that the American dream is dead is a phrase, and I think it's thrown around by government officials or influencers, and I think that we don't need more government intervention into Gen Z's life. I don't think we need more government support. In fact, I think we just need people to be more self-reliant. Like you said, put your head down and work. I mean, yeah, there's millionaires that you hear about or billionaires. They dropped out of college or they dropped out of school, but they put in the work to build massive companies.
Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another thing. They've been talking about going back to the trades. Yeah, there's a lot of contractors in my neighborhood. Those people did very well because they weren't afraid to get their hands dirty, and they learned a skill, and then they learned to hire other people. They got a business started. But if you're doing the same thing that 100,000 other people are doing, that may not be the one where you're going to make a lot of money. So you have to find a niche and see where you can expand on it, and if there's something you really want to do. But if you take a multi-pronged approach towards success and stay consistent with it, you may not be one of these guys who gets the big breaks, but you're gonna get there. You will get there. I started off, I had a blown engine. I had a pickup truck with a blown engine, and a dog and ex-wife and a kid when I first went in the Army. And then I came out in 20 years. I went from an enlisted guy, I retired as a lieutenant colonel with a PhD. I think that's example that if a person, no matter, even if they have to bounce back a second time or a third time into their career path, you can do that. And by the way, I was just at a young professionals event because I consider myself a young professional right now because I'm starting a new career. It's in politics. I'm not going to make money at it, but I'm a brand new person in politics, so I'm learning. I'm the same as you. You're about to go to college in a couple of years. I'm learning in politics. So we're both in that same thing. So you should be able to have the agility to reinvent yourself and your goals as you progress in your life.
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, you're not in politics for the money. That's a big argument right now. I know there's the argument, I don't know how you feel about this, but of congressmen or really any member of Senate or Congress being able to trade individual stocks. I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's congresswomen and congressmen that make millions. I mean, millions.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It should be, if they had... that's just simply ridiculous. They should not be doing that. They know better. Yeah. That's not ethical. I don't care if it's against the law or not. It's not ethical. I've been talking about this lately, and I'll share that with you. There's something I learned a long time ago when I was in officer candidate school. It's called the three rules for honorable living, if you will. One is, does this action attempt to deceive anyone or allow anyone to be deceived? Okay. Then the next action is, would I be satisfied if I were on the receiving end of this action, right? And the reason why they have these rules is so they're kind of like your guardrails, okay? Because by trying to deceive something or getting an advantage to which you wouldn't have otherwise, would this give you an advantage that you would not otherwise have received?
Yes.
Yeah,
cheating to get
no, absolutely not. So by following the three rules, you have a guardrail, and would you be happy if would you be happy if that was you? That was so. If you keep those three things in mind, would I be satisfied? It was me in that end. Am I trying to deceive anybody or allowing anybody to be deceived? And if you go and follow the rules, that keeps you in place.
Yeah.
And don't try to deceive people. And don't try to get an advantage that you shouldn't get. And also, hey, if it was me, how would I feel? That's very, very basic, three basic things. And I say that because I use those as my watch posts, and a lot of people have forgotten about that. I think they need to have much stronger courses in ethics in schools, starting in high school, because your brain's still malleable, you're still learning. You want to get that sense of right and wrong early enough. And since the states decided to take it upon itself for so many other things, I don't know why they aren't giving people a strong sense of right and wrong on the ethics, because of those are three simple things that everybody should embrace. Yeah, it would be a better place if it was.
No, that's true. I mean, I think transparency in politics is it's a key part. I think if you're running, obviously you are running. It's what the people want to hear. I think people are tired of finding out that their politicians have been spending money on trips overseas, maybe using that
boondoggles and junkets.
Yeah, using their taxpayer dollars to go somewhere. And is it really honest? Is it really ethical? And is it fair to the taxpayer? And I think people are tired of politicians taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for coming on. I think we've had a great conversation. And anything else you want to say?
No, I'll just say thank you for having me on, and I hope that that some of the people who watch this can get something out of it, and just vote PierceForCongress.com, and LTC Michael Pierce for Congress is my Facebook. So I appreciate all the stuff that you're doing in advancing the cause. You're well spoken for your generation, and I hope we see more people like you out there. So keep it up.
Thank you.